Hey, this is Frank the Pest Geek. Hey, we're going to get into the information, misinformation, perception, and reality of people's attitudes towards pesticides and pest control companies. Check this out. Okay, so we're going to be discussing there's a love-hate relationship with pest control pesticides and pests. And most of the time it's hate. And what we got to do as professional pest control technicians is deal with the science, the facts, but also the marketing. And I want to discuss with you how it is that the attitudes are changing in the marketplace and why your attitude and the misinformation that you're given, that I hear all the time from pest control people, that are misinformed and out of touch with the reality of what they're facing in the future. I want you to take a look at this. And here is an article on the Journal of Integrated Pest Management. It's pesticide knowledge, attitudes, and practices among small-scale HMO farmers in the San Joaquin Valley of California. Okay, now this is agriculture. This is not residential, but I want you to hear this and I want you to read it for yourself. This is, and here are the people who wrote it. This was back in 2019, so this was just recent. We're not talking 20 years ago. Okay, a survey, and I'm going to read it on the screen. A survey was conducted to assess the pesticide knowledge, attitude, practices of small scale, and I got to learn what that term is. I have no idea. Farmers in the Fresno area of San Joaquin Valley, California. HMO farmers in this region found to cultivate 35 crops, most of which were Asian specialty crops with economic significance. The majority of farmers use pesticide on their farms primarily to control disease and insects. Long bean, sweet peas were perceived to require more pesticide than other crops. Participants, let me go down a little bit so you can read it, were aware of pesticide-related health risks. Listen, participants were aware of pest-related health risks, yet 71% had no formal, you ready for this? Education. 71% had no formal education. We're talking about illiterate people working on farms. Most participants used personal protection equipment, PPE, and follow safe application practice. Yet 84% reported that they wear work clothing from the farm into their home, which could contribute to take-home pesticide exposure pathway. 75% of participants were not familiar with the concept of integrated pest management. This is in agriculture. You got illiterate people who were taught on PPE, yet 84% were taught to wear PPE, yet they were taking their clothes and washing it. Now they're using a ton of pesticides that we're not even using in the pest control industry. We're not familiar with the concept. We're talking about 75% were not familiar with the concept of integrated pest management. 50 years of integrated pest management, which started in agriculture, yet 3/4 of the people do not know what IPM is. As formal pest management practice, however, many participants were using some component of IPM, such as crop rotation. Well, they know it just from agriculture. Nearly all participants, 96%, requested, listen to this, more pesticide safety training be made available in HMO. I'm trying to figure out where that is. This study contributes to the understanding of potential of pesticide exposure and health risks among HMO farmers in the San Joaquin Valley, California. Now, this is California. This is the basic place where every environmentalist comes from, where all the laws on pesticide pretty much affect the rest of the nation, where they're banning second-generation rodenticides. And yet, these guys in the farms that are doing the pesticide work have no clue what integrated pest management is, and they're wearing their clothes home. And although they were familiar with PPE, I didn't venture to say how many were actually wearing their PPE and they were wearing it correctly. This is where it's either hypocrisy or lunacy or what planet do we come from mentality. What I want you to read is this article in the New York Times. The article in the New York Times on personal health, this is the New York Times, should a study on pesticide affect our use of them? Now, this is not in the pest control industry. This is for normal people. There is, a guy with a pesticide. This is written by Jane Brody. Let's read this. With summer here and more people choosing to escape their coronavirus prisons into yards, parks, woods, streets, and a recent study suggests another potential risk, one far less concerning than the virus, exposure to pyrethroids, a major group of insecticide widely used to protect against everything from malaria, parasites, West Nile virus, and bedbugs and ticks, as well as a host of our agricultural and garden pests. The study she is citing found a link between pyrethroids and death from heart disease. Is it itself a cautionary tale, one that can help you better understand the implications and limitations of epidemiological research? Pyrethroids, as a leading component of both indoor and outdoor insecticides, are the second most widely used pesticide in the world after chlorpyrifos. They are generally considered harmless to people and pets in the concentrations needed to protect them from disease-carrying critters with 6 to 8 legs. These are derived from compounds called pyrethrins, found naturally in flowers and chrysanthemums. But just because the origin of pyrethroids is natural doesn't necessarily mean they're safe, especially if people are chronically or repeatedly exposed to them. Now, I want to stop right there and I want to have a conversation with you. What do you spray 99.99% of the time when you baseboard spray somebody's home? It's pyrethroids. We can't baseboard spray legally, that I know of, neonicotinoids. You can't baseboard spray pyrethroids and all organophosphates are gone. She's comparing chlorpyrifos, which is an organophosphate, which is really used in agriculture, and pyrethroids, and talking about it naturally being derived. It's not naturally derived. It's a synthetic form. So when people tell their clients, well, this is pyrethroid, and I hear technicians say that, and I've had technicians knock on my door and tell me that pyrethroids are safe because they're derived from chrysanthemums. No, they're not. They're synthetically derived. Pyrethrum is natural, is OMRI certified, is classified as organic, but not pyrethroids. They're not the same. Laboratory studies pyrethroid doses are far greater than people would normally encounter, have caused inflammation, DNA damage, oxidative stress. These effects may or may not happen in people, but they suggest the new findings could biologically be possible. Also, limited studies in people have found links to impaired neurological development, reproductive health, major disease like diabetes, Parkinson's disease, and cardiovascular disease. So you're reading this and you're saying, and you're a pest control professional, you're saying, she's totally misinformed. She's totally wrong. That study, if you read the study, it's basically in agriculture. It's basically this or it's that. And I will say you're absolutely right, except you still lost the battle. As a matter of fact, you're losing the war. Because you don't have a voice in the industry that is countering this in the public press, in the public media, that is challenging the article. And then how far does this go? Second of all, they do have a voice, and it's on the New York Times. When you keep reading about what's going on and that it is 99% of what you're going to spray in people's home is pyrethroids, how are you going to explain this study and have a conversation with a customer who says, I want to know now what you're spraying in my home? Because I read an article that pyrethroids, and I found that most people are spraying pyrethroids. I want to know what you're spraying. I've had a guy come and tell me here, oh, what I'm spraying is totally natural. And totally lie to me, not knowing who I am. When you have this information out there and you have to deal with it, I'm going to tell you why you're deceiving yourself and thinking you can continue to do baseboard spraying, do it the same old way for very long before this starts to decline on you. Take a look. In a national survey, research surveys finds that 84% of homeowners experienced a pest problem in the past 12 months. Now, this was written back in 2012. However, I don't know about you, but pests haven't changed their biology in the last 9 years. This coincides with what PCT magazine reports. A national survey by Home Team Pest Defense, the third largest residential pest control company in the U.S., found that, I don't know if that's true anymore, found that 84% of America's homeowners experienced a pest problem in the past 12 months. From April of 2012, the pest issues for homeowners in that particular year were ants 49%, spiders 43%, flies 37%, mosquitoes 34%, and mice 30%, and wasps 29%. And the study goes on to show, but 84% of people experience a pest problem. So why aren't we only treating 10 and less than 20% of homes in America? Why are pest control people not servicing the amount of homes that we should be servicing? And why is the DIY market continue to grow? And why has the over-the-counter market outpaced us and won an 80-20 and the 80-20 rule? Why isn't it reversed? We're going to find out why. A study by University of Florida, which I love this study. I love it because there's a bunch of people in here I really like. Philip Kohler, Pereira, and Faith Oy, all of the University of Florida. Here's a study, and we're going to just go. I'm going to give you links to all of this. Public perception of pest problems. The public perception of pest problems. Well, it kind of coincides with what that study said, but here's a little. All right. Look at the little chart on your right there under me. Let me see if I can make this bigger. 2% of people do not know if pesticides are harmful. 16% say they're very harmful. 30% said they're not harmful. And 52% said they're somewhat harmful. This is public perception about pesticides. My customers fall into that 16%, which if you understand the diffusion of innovation and how markets trends happen, that 16% is my clientele right now that don't want it in their homes. The not harmful is probably going to be my next market segment that we're going after as this becomes more popular and we expand and do marketing. And then that somewhat harmful is my very next target. So it's, if you're going clockwise, being able to change the perception of somebody who doesn't believe pesticides are harmful, when they believe it's harmful, then they can be my customer because we offer an alternative to the traditional baseboard spraying. And what we're doing is greener than baseboard spraying for sure. But that's the public perception. So when we go over to here, to back to this story of, and I can't pronounce Steven's last name, I'm sorry, Tibetan. I'm going to take a stab at that. I'm probably wrong. But I know fewer. And there was a debate. But here is the other perception. Remember, I did this on this one in case you missed it. And we're going to go a little deeper into this. Here's why over-the-counter product sales and DIY is going to take off, and it's going to make it harder for you if you don't change your attitude. Rollins went on to say that according to University of Kentucky study, 66% of Americans polled believe that pesticides cause cancer. It's a totally different question than is pesticides harmful. It's how you pose the question that will determine in surveys how you're going to get the answer. But about 50-something, 66% believe that pesticides cause cancer for both their home and work environment. 77% were concerned about pesticides. In addition, 85% wanted pesticides with no odor. Well, most modern pyrethroids have very little or no odor. Neonicotinoids have no odor. 62% preferred only outdoor treatments. Why? Because people associate odors with things being toxic. If they can't smell, understand that human beings are sensual. Taste, smell, touch. What's tangible? Smell is tangible. If it smells, it has to be toxic. Well, fipronil doesn't smell, and people consider that to be more toxic. But remember, they grew up with, things that had petroleum distillates in it. Most of those we don't have. 62% preferred outdoor treatments. A whopping 83% of those polled would pay extra. 83% would pay extra for a professional PMP to use fewer pesticides in the account. 83% of people would prefer that somebody use less. That's different than the guy coming in and doing nothing. Use less. So if you take baits, which can reduce it 95% compared to spraying the whole baseboard, that goes in line with this. 75% of the group would pay between 10 and 25% more for the same results if you can use less chemical. All right, let's go to here. Let's keep reading. 65% of Americans confessed of having a pest problem in a Gallup survey. Well, the other study said 80-something. It all depends how honest people feel being about, their information. Only about 10% of the group actually called a pest control professional firm. Why? The other surveyed 54% believe pesticides that pest control professionals used were harmful. 64% said they would wait until the problem was severe before calling a professional. You see, for decades, we told people that what we used was stronger, that what we used only we could get because it was so powerful. Now you have the unintended consequences of telling that to your clients. And we could be getting so much more business if people didn't have a fear of professional pesticides that professionals use. You've got places like Do My Own Pest Control. This was in 97, by the way. Now you have Do My Own Pest Control. Guess what? People have now realized you can get the same thing that professionals used, and they're doing it themselves, and they're not afraid of them. In 1997, Rollins concluded that he believed, this was, I guess, Mr. Rollins himself, our market could be a lot bigger than it is right now. 8 years later, I like to note that public perception of pesticides is even worse today. Obviously, there's greater potential for profit today for those of us who want to use safer alternatives. In 1997, 8 years later from the study, so we would have been 97, 91 to 2021, we're talking 21 years later or 20 years later. Personal perspective. My personal transition from spray jockey 35 years ago to internationally recognized authority on intelligent pest management, IPM, today began when I lost family members and became seriously ill myself. I realized my use of pesticide had caused this. I had to detoxify, get well, then either find safer alternatives or leave the pest control business. This was the argument of why he did it. And today, guys, there is a growing sentiment of what chemicals and pesticides do because of all the information that's available out there about chemicals. And pesticides are chemicals. And pesticides, if you read the SDS, according to OSHA, they're hazardous chemicals, regardless of the signal word. So if we have this knowledge and we see the trend in the industry from 20 years ago, changing to IPM, changing to a cleaner tactic, to a safer pest control, to a less exposure, less risk, we're seeing things like pyrethroid now are going to be under attack. Why is it that you're sticking to your guns on being a baseboard jockey? Why is it that I'm still getting calls every day from people asking, they just asked me to spray this house for flies? Why would I do that? Why would you continue to operate from 35 years of doing things and refuse to see the fact that attitudes towards the pest control industry and the products we use versus the reality of what we do and what could be done better? And why I'm telling you that unless we have a voice, because where is MPMA talking openly about this and spearheading a change in the minds of consumers the same way other industry associations have led the way for their industry to change the mind of consumers? And this is why I put out videos, and this is why I do a podcast, and this is why I'm going to do another podcast, and why I'm doing 5 different podcasts. Because I believe in what I've been doing for the last 9 years. He believed he was doing it 20 years ago. Fewer believes in doing this. And so do many greats in this industry. And then you're training your people to basically take chemical and spray it everywhere, regardless. And you don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to overcoming the public perception. And it's costing you new business. It's costing you a new clientele. The reality is it all works is that you don't want to change what it is you do. You're set in your ways and it's final. It's done. Understand that your way of doing business is dead. You just don't know it. The way of not telling the customer the truth doesn't work anymore because everybody has access to the information. 20 years ago, you couldn't find a label to save your life online. Today you can. Today, we are in the information age. And when information abounds, ignorance abounds even more by the evidence of reading stuff like this. 96% requested more safety training in California. You know, this is the epitome, folks, of what I consider lunacy, hypocrisy. You know, how can California stand there and claim that it's leading the way in this charge when their farmers don't even know really about IPM, and it's been 50 years? We got a lot of work to do, folks. We got a lot of work to do in our industry to overcome the image and the public perception of what we do when what we do is public health. When we control that roach problem in a hotel, in a restaurant, and a bed bug problem in a hotel, and we keep those kids from getting bit at night, we're doing a lot of good. The problem is the perception of what we do in the public eye needs to change. And where is the industry leading the way to make that perception change about what we do instead of becoming defensive about it? There's a new book out called Quantum Marketing. I really want you to get it. I want you to read about the next job of marketing and how marketing is going to change. It's changing, it's evolving, but the next real leap in marketing. With millennials, transparency and honesty is going to be the top thing. And here's the thing, they're getting into their 30s now. They're going to have the buying power. They're buying the homes. They're having children. They're going to buy the cars. They're probably going to be that pretty much pay for everything and anything. And that's going to be their biggest clientele. However, when you lie to them or when you give them simplistic answers, you're going to lose them. And why we need to be at the head of this, those of us that believe in integrated pest management or some form of it, some holistic pest management, and how we deal with the indoor air quality in the environment. All the studies that show pyrethroids attach itself to dust and then circulate through the building. How many of those studies have you read to argue against them? How many times have you gone into Google study and actually pulled a study to understand what the studies are showing? No, you stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and you say, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's not true. It's all a lie. It's all an agenda. Everybody's got an agenda. Everybody's got an agenda. I don't want to hear it. That's how a lot of you behave. I remember when we used to have DDT and chloridane and I sprayed it on everything. Unfortunately, they're not there anymore. It's a miracle you're here. And that no longer flies. This is the stuff we got to start getting real on, folks. Because this is the thing that, hey, there's going to be two pest control industries. those that are listening to the client and creating programs to accommodate the wishes of those clients and solving those problems without the contamination, without the spraying, without protecting the indoor quality, protecting surfaces, and those that want to spray everything. And the problem is that clientele that wants you to spray everything is dying, and the new one is rising. What are we doing for the next generation of pest control people, for the next generation of customers? I want you to think about that. This is Frank the Pest Geek wishing you a pestacular day.